And we have a very special company here with us today. So it's special in many respects. First and foremost, it's a company with and by one of our own administrative team members, Leon Maspero, and I assume that's her father. But also it's a very unusual company. So it's not your average company that makes whatever we had, clothing or food. So it's a very special, cool concept, company, product. And so maybe I'll turn the microphone over to Leon to do the introductions. And so I suggest for the agenda for today, maybe a quick introduction of the company, 10, 15 minutes. And so we already have a few students joining us here live. We also have a few students who emailed me the questions because they have classes at this time, they couldn't attend live. So we'll revert to questions and answers right after your short presentation.
Perfect.
Great, thanks, Vas. Nice to meet you at last, after all of this time. And
very nice to meet you too.
Thanks to everybody for joining. Yeah, Vas, as you said, Bergplaas Nature Reserve is a very different type of company. Firstly, because it's owned by Princess Irene van Lippe of the Netherlands, which is quite unusual in itself. Secondly, that it's a company that has never turned over a profit. And that's almost been by design. Obviously, Princess Irene, being who she is, was able to finance the project and the property, the reserve, through her own financial resources. So that was 23 years ago, right, when Irene bought the property. And it's been rehabilitated, and there's wildlife, and our main focus is training courses. But we get into the stage now where Irene is 83, 84 years of age. None of her family, none of her kids are interested in taking the project over. So what we've been doing over the last number of years in preparing for when Irene steps aside, which is going to be within the next 6 months, in terms of supporting it financially, there's a foundation that's been formed overseas, the Bergplaas Foundation. And so their main role is to fundraise, and that's based in the Netherlands. And then for that money to continue to flow over to South Africa, to Bergplaas Nature Reserve, where we can continue with our work.
So can we ask you to tell more about the nature reserve itself? Is it like a big national park, or what is it? I have a general idea, but I'm still not sure how it's set up.
Yeah, sure. So we are a proclaimed nature reserve. So it's gazetted as a private protected area, a PPA, through the provincial administration. So the Eastern Cape Parks Tourism Authority. So they did all of the legal work for us. So in terms of status, a national park is at the top of the list. Nature reserve is directly below that, which is what we are. And then you have a protected environment, which is one below that. So we're quite high up in terms of conservation status. The size of the property is 5,500 hectares. And there's quite a nice video, little clip, 30-second clip later on, and you can get an idea of what the landscape looks like.
So
and
for those of you in the United States, that's about 10,000 acres.
Correct, yeah. Yeah, around about there.
And then it is basically all wild. You have wild animals roaming around, or I've seen some photos that Leon posted, and so it seems like you can have a visit from just about any African animal for lunch or for breakfast. So
yeah, look, so we don't have any dangerous or potentially dangerous animals like what we call the big five. So there's no elephant, rhinoceros, lion, leopard. But general game is eland, black wildebeest, springbok, blesbok, red hartebeest, klipspringer. This probably won't mean anything to you, but we are biodiversity rich, as well as being the landscape is called the Namakuru landscape or biome, which is essentially a grassland biome. So we're up in the mountains. We can get really, really cold. Coldest we've measured since we've been here is minus 15 degrees Celsius.
Oh, so it can get cold. Okay.
Yeah, we have snowfalls every year. And then conversely, in summer, we can get up, 38, 40 degrees in a hot time. So there's huge fluctuation. Fires quite frequently. We have fires, being a grassland, fires will come through from lightning strikes. I think one of the magical aspects of the property is that we're totally off the grid. So we provide our own electricity, and we're responsible for our own water, taking away our own refuse for recycling. So we're not reliant on anybody for the way that we live in and work here.
So how many
And
people does it take to manage the property?
so there's, I think, 9 of us altogether employed, and that's including Cindy, my wife, and myself, and we manage the property and facilitate the courses. And then we have some co-managers that work with us, look after the guest house, and then we have a conservation team. And then we also take students from Nelson Mandela University for a year's internship, and those students are studying nature conservation or game ranch management, and they'll come and do a year's practical with us. And at the end of that year, they'll qualify with a national diploma in nature conservation.
So the jobs you do then, because first I thought it was more about being sort of like a forest ranger, but it sounds like there is a lot of educational activity, a lot of administrative work that needs to be done. So it's less about, I don't know, clearing the woods or whatever you might do on the natural side, but it's more on the management and education side. Is it correct, or both?
Yeah, it's a bit of everything, Vas. So there's definitely, when I'm working with the conservation team, we'll be doing things like alien plant control, soil erosion control, game counts, game capture, fence repairs, maintenance of roads, water pumps, encroaching vegetation, all of those sort of things, fire, burning, possibly. So all of those things fall under the conservation team, and that's very hands-on, working in nature, out in the field. And then we also have our Spirit of the Wild courses, and there we're getting people, community members, often who are unemployed. Just to go into a little bit, I'm sure everybody knows the history of South Africa and apartheid. And so there was this huge divide, and then Black people, underprivileged people, never got access or the chance to go into a natural area, to go into a nature reserve. And so part of what we do is to take these people out of the townships and to offer them to come and see and experience and value the experience, such as a place as Bergplaas, and what that can offer, and why are these places important to them when they're living in the township, maybe 2 or 3 hours away. So there's a big educational aspect of it as well.
Can you tell us more about the programs that you offer? So the Spirit of the Wild kind of suggests what the programs are about, but as I understand, you serve different types of customers, and I assume there are somewhat different programs. Can you tell us more about that aspect of your operations?
Sure. Russ, I'm actually, we've got some slides here, which I haven't been
clicking
on.
Oh, yes, that would be nice. Yeah, let me see if I can.
Yeah,
you should be able to share the slides, right?
Yeah.
I still don't have access. Same page.
Should be possible. So from what I see as a presenter, you should be able to. So it doesn't give you the chance. Let me do this. Let me make you co-host, and I think that will change the role. Is it working now?
Yes, thank you. Can you see the screen?
Yes. The only thing is it show. Yeah, it's working. Yes.
Which slide do you want?
Okay, that's fine. Thanks. Okay, so some of this might be a bit of a repeat of what I've already said, but there pretty much is a summary of our story. Partners in training. FOGASA is the Field Guides Association of Southern Africa. So we're endorsed by them as a specialized training provider. And that I'll go into now when we talk about the Spirit of the Wild program and the different opportunities that we offer. Sand Parks is our national parks. Cape Nature is a provincial conservation body. Nelson Mandela is NMU, George Campus, the Tracker Academy, and then WESA, which is the Wildlife and Environmental Society of South Africa. So those are some of the NGOs and the government bodies that we've partnered with over the years. So you were asking us, what do we offer? What is Bergplaas about? And it's the fundamental reason for Bergplaas being here is training, and specifically for students and previously disadvantaged members of community. So as you can read there, it's a profound personal and leadership skills development, rewilds and reconnects us to our culture, our natural heritage, and through deep experience, questioning, and commitment. And that's what we do in the week. And it's quite hard to explain through a computer screen. But when participants come here, there's no cell phone reception, there's no Wi-Fi. And so we really go back to basics, and we spend the days for that week in nature. So it's not a classroom setting where we lecturing or anything like that. We guiding the participants through a nature-based experience, which then allows them to make certain realizations about themselves, about their life, about their hopes, about their dreams, what they want to achieve, where they want to go, how they're going to get there. And so as facilitators, we just gently ask the questions and put the ideas there, but it's really nature that does the work and the individual that does the work. So as facilitators, we actually try and step away from the process once it starts as much as possible. And I must say, you know, we've been doing this now for 17, 18 years, and it really is amazing the profound effect, the profound impact that spending a week in nature can have on the individual psyche, on their health, on their well-being, on their perspective of life, relationships, personal work with their families. It really is a very deep and profound experience. This is just a short clip of the landscape. Will give you an idea.
This is beautiful, like from a movie.
Yeah. So our house is just to the left of the screen, on the left-hand side of the screen here. And so that's our,
where exactly is it located? As I understand, it's a little north of Johannesburg, or in terms of the geography on the continent?
Yeah, south of Johannesburg. So it's
South.
sort of kind of in the middle of the country inland. So we're 4 hours from Port Elizabeth, the closest coast or major city on the coast. So we're 4 hours from there. And it's in the province called the Eastern Province, the Eastern Cape province. Yeah, Eastern Cape has its own history. It was, again, during the apartheid time, one of the provinces that was looked after the least. So it sort of got left behind in many respects in terms of its infrastructure, in terms of job creation, all of that. So we're facing, not just as a country, but the Eastern Cape, among the youth, unemployment is as high as almost 50%. So there's a lot of hopelessness, there's a lot of gangsterism, there's a lot of alcohol abuse, family abuse, physical abuse, all of these things. So we play quite an important role in just offering people an experience outside of that. So it comes very much back to communities, you know, and these are maybe some of the questions that we would look at when we're talking about taking students and or community members into these wild spaces. You know, how do we look after each other in our communities? What is your personal role within your community? And what behavioral changes can I make to support myself and to support my community? And because we're doing it in this wild space where it's most of the time it's a new experience for everybody. Everybody's on the same level, right? And there's a certain amount of nervousness, what to expect, what does this mean for me? You know, I'm away from my family, I'm away from my cell phone. So it's really, there can be a fear-based experience for the first couple of days. And then you find on day 3, people really start to connect with themselves and start to feel more comfortable within the environment. And that's where the magic starts to happen. And by taking the time to ask these questions really has a very deep impact on the individual. And because the individual has had a deep experience, they take then back that experience back to their communities. And slowly and surely what we start finding is word of mouth spreads, and these positive influences, these positive ways of thinking, ways of living, start to be incorporated into the larger community. But it's a slow process. It's not, it doesn't happen overnight. Right, looking at the way we teach and the way we put these experiences across, as you can see on the left there, directed attention, which is what most of us do most of the time in front of a computer or learning at school or university. And you can see what it can bring. So again, in terms of market related, how does this relate to our market? What we also offer is to overseas people and local South Africans, but more a retreat type experience. So it's not so much a learning, but it's more a retreat type experience. And this is often for corporates where individuals are burnt out, you know, especially after COVID. We find in people have this strong urge to get back into nature. And because those opportunities were taken away to jump in your car or jump in the plane and, you know, fly to South Africa and go to Kruger National Park or come to Bergplaas, we find in people are really drawn now to appreciate and make the most of these natural areas. And so what we find is when you're working in nature, when you spend time in nature in a relaxed way, disconnected physically from your phone and all of those sort of things, you can see what starts to happen. Your interest and your curiosity start to become alive again. Your attention is captured, mental relaxation, recharged and healing. And so this is another part of our market. So just to make it clear, that Spirit of the Wild course, which I spoke about for students and for community members, that's always been funded from overseas. And then these retreat type experiences are then paid for by paying clients, and most of them, obviously with a Dutch connection with Princess Irene, most of those people are coming out of Holland. So part of our question is, you know, where can we expand to outside of Holland?
Exactly. And for students, if you're still not sure what those courses look like, I don't know, it's not a perfect analogy, but what comes to my mind is there was this movie, I think in the 80s, called City Slickers, with Billy Crystal. And so here it was about a bunch of New Yorkers going, I think in that case, it was to somewhere in Arizona in the United States. But yes, you know, people, busy professionals living in a big city, constant noise, constant, I don't know, thousands of people around you. And so sometimes you just need to take a break and go somewhere deep into the wild. And in that particular movie, they were doing some cattle runs, I believe it's called. But it seems to me that the Spirit of the Wild reserve or a program might be offering something like that, not only for the demographics they currently serve, but also busy people from just about any large city on this planet who need that time off with the nature to reflect, to think, to recharge perhaps before they can return back to the normal sort of busy life.
Yeah, exactly. I think you just gave your age away there, Russ, but we'll pretend that didn't happen.
Yes.
Guys, what's interesting about Bergplaas is that, you know, we're not offering a product. We're not manufacturing a vehicle. We're not manufacturing a gas heater or whatever the situation. But what we are offering is the opportunity for an insight to help you realize what is important in your life. And again, it comes back to the COVID thing and what we all went through, you know. We start to reevaluate what is really important to us. And I think people have carried that forward. So what we're offering is really a lifestyle, you know, an insight into your inner workings, your inner thoughts, your inner feelings. And often these are things that we don't have time for, huh? Because of work, because of family commitments, because of studying. So we push it aside, we push it aside, we push it aside. But coming here for a week and spending time in nature anywhere, in nature in this way allows us to perceive things differently. A new outlook, recharge, mental relaxation. And I think all of us could do with a dose of that every now and again.
Can I ask you a few questions? So facilities, I assume you do have some sort of, I don't know, building, housing, lodging options for groups, right? How does it work? How many people can you receive and accommodate?
So we can sleep up to 22, but we like to work with not more than 16 in a group. You know, so 12 to 16 participants at a time, and there's a guest house, so everybody sleeps in the guest house. The ladies in the guest house will look after us in terms of the catering, so they do all of our cooking, 3 meals a day. Cindy and myself do the facilitation, and we're out in nature, out walking each and every day. So the only thing one needs to bring is your personal, good walking shoes, something for if it's hot, something for if it's cold. And it's as simple as that, so everything else is you looked after in a very special and caring way, if I can put it like that. So it's a very nurturing experience, so one can just arrive and not have to worry about the logistics or anything like that.
And there were a few students who did ask about the arrivals. So how easy or difficult is it to reach your place? So what would be sort of the normal route? Fly into what, Cape Town or Johannesburg, and then take a bus, or how does it work?
Yeah, so what most people do is Joburg or Cape Town, as you said, and then either fly or drive, but I would suggest a fly, especially if you're coming from a flight, especially if you're coming from Johannesburg down to Port Elizabeth, or now known as Gqeberha, in the Eastern Cape, and then there's a 4-hour drive up to the reserve. But if participants are able to get themselves to Port Elizabeth, then we in contact with companies that do shuttle services for us. So they'll pick you up at Port Elizabeth Airport and bring you straight up to the property, drop you at the guest house. Other
So
people,
that's not difficult, and I assume the drive from the airport to the reserve is probably a picturesque drive, so that counted as part of the adventure.
Absolutely, yeah. You get out of Port Elizabeth, 15 minutes outside of Port Elizabeth, and you're in the wide open spaces already, and it's all the way like that up to Crawford, which is our closest town, and then that's about an hour, 20 minutes from Crawford up to us.
A couple more questions. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I just wanted to say what some people do flying down to Cape Town, they then choose to self-drive, because then you can come up the garden route along the coast and then come inland, and so some people will also rent a vehicle in Cape Town, spend some time along the coast.
That actually probably would be my preferred way to see some country. And yeah, a couple more questions came about the programs. So in the Spirit of the Wild description, it's more about self-reflection, recharging, self-development. But you did mention something about the university students, and so several students were asking if you also offer a site or maybe even some program for training or education or research or educational types of programs for, I don't know, biology, zoology, conservationism, or whatever the name of that program would be. So is it all about self-development, or there is also a sort of more like a scientific component or more like research science related to natural sciences?
Look, first, we've always been open to that, to that side of it. And this is part of our partnership that we formed with Nelson Mandela University over the years. So there is these students, and we only take 2 of the students for their year's internship. There is a research side attached to that. But myself, I'm not a scientist at all. But look, if an overseas student came to us and said, look, this is a project, this is my degree, this is what I'm looking, and there were guidelines from that university, then for sure, if we could and where we could, and if the project was relevant, then we'd definitely be open to that. Maybe it's just a month's working experience or something like that. So we're open to any and all ideas, and it's really for the students or for people to put it forward to us, and we can work around that and see how we can accommodate.
And another type of programs that we get a lot of questions, again, I'm not sure if you're already doing them, but would you be open to something like that? So executive strategic planning retreats. So at least in the United States, it's become almost a movement to once a year take all the key decision makers from the company and specifically take them as far away from civilization as possible. No cell phones, as wild as possible. I've heard some people go to somewhere in the Amazon forest, others go somewhere deep in the United States, deserts and stuff like that. And so for a few days, they would be there specifically sort of planning, strategizing, assessing their prior year perhaps, and maybe making the big plans for the next few years. So in this case, it would be not so much for self-development, but almost just get all the executives together in an isolated place so that they can think clearly as they're making those big plans for the next foreseeable future. So have you done anything like that, or would you be open to receiving executives like that for these strategic planning retreats?
Yeah, so we have done that, and COVID put a stop to that to a certain degree, and it's starting to pick up again now. But what we had done for 8 years prior to COVID was we took MBA students, about 16 of them from Erasmus University, and they would come. This was their last week of their studies. Some were permanent students, some were corporates that were working and studying part-time, and they would come here, and there would be a guy that came out from the States, and he did the leadership part of it, and that was more like a classroom-based type experience. And then Cindy and I would tie that in with the nature-based experience. So it would be a combination maybe of a classroom type experience in the morning and then an afternoon out in nature. So yeah, very open to that. We just did a retreat with medical personnel from Holland end of last year. We've got an international trail booked, 2 of them for later this year. That's just quickly to explain about the trail. That's maybe even more on the wild side. So the group will arrive, they'll spend their first night in the guest house, and then for 3 or 4 or 5 nights, depending how long they want to sleep out, we will actually carry all of our food and our tents and everything with us, and we'll go into the reserve and we'll camp out for 3 or 4 or 5 nights, and then the last night back in the guest house. So we call that the Spirit of the Wild Primitive Trail. Mm-hmm. So yeah, even to get closer, more uncluttered from ourselves, and get more connected with nature. So that's the third product, I guess, that we offer.
Very interesting. So how do you currently advertise your program, or how do the customers find you?
Yeah, so to be honest, we're not great at advertising. We have a website, bergplaas.com. Most of it is word of mouth. So these NGOs and that, they've known us now over the years, so we've got a good track record there. So we have key people within those organizations who'll be able to contact and give the core states to, and they'll, generally speaking, they'll send 4 or 5 people from each organization, and then we get a group together like that. But we definitely, for example, I think in the last 3 months, I've just signed up on LinkedIn, and that's my only social sort of platform or way of getting things out there. But definitely we could do more. We could be more visual. So that's not one of our strengths in terms of talking about ourselves, if I can put it like that. I think both Cindy and myself found it difficult to do that sort of hard marketing side of it.
Yeah. Out of curiosity, I went online to Google and just Googled similar programs like meditation retreats, executive retreats, writing retreats. There are literally hundreds and hundreds of companies. I didn't find anything out of Africa, at least, in my short search. So I think you are definitely not a monopoly, but, there is not much competition definitely on the African continent. But it seems like it's a very popular movement. So it seems like there are other companies playing in this space. So probably with some advertisement, maybe some clever advertisement, so that doesn't cost much money, I can imagine that it would attract quite a lot of interested visitors. So yes.
Agree.
Oh, go ahead.
I agree with you there, Vas. It's especially, just coming out of Holland, if you look at the amount of individuals that are, what's the word that was used? Coaches. That's their personal coaches, coaches. And if you Google, as you say, it's almost to the point where it's oversubscribed to the amount of companies overseas that offer these type of experiences. So one thing we don't want to be is we don't want to become this huge commercial entity project where we lose our core values. And that's one thing that we've always been so grateful for and always been so lucky to hold on to, because we haven't had this pressure of having to secure revenue in terms of income. that we've been able to hold on to, like what is really valuable to us as Bergplaas. We haven't had to sell our souls in any way in order to attract people there. So we really want to hang on to that. And I think our biggest strength is that we've been doing it now for 17 years, and so, but it is time. Sorry, I'm sort of backtracking, but so I spoke about the funding and that we always reliant on the funding coming from overseas. So what we want to do from the South African perspective is to increase the number of paying courses. Okay, and my feeling is that most of those aren't going to be local South Africans, that they will be out of Holland. And Bergplaas is well known in Holland because of Princess Irene. She's written a number of books about it, and so I think that's probably one of our strongest marketing areas. But we definitely want to balance out that having to be so reliant on funding, and how can we get more of a stable income through doing 5, 6, 8, 10 paying courses a year, that would make a huge difference.
Yeah. So also, I imagine in this kind of business, I guess if we can call it, location is everything. And so while there may be many other companies that can be offering some sort of meditation retreats or self-development retreats, again, it's all about location. And if you are somewhere outside of New York or Montreal, you can't quite compete with someone who is in such a picturesque area like what we just saw on the pictures. So yes. All right, so we seem like somebody is joining late. Neha is asking for a quick overview. Neha, we kind of went over the company, so maybe you can watch the recording. So unless you have a more specific question. One question I will ask then, so in terms of the geography one more time. So you mentioned that most of your participants or customers or program students are from the Netherlands, but you're open to receiving people from just about any country, right? So geographically, you don't really care where they come from, maybe spare the language barrier potentially if they come from a country where, for example, English is not spoken, or are there any sort of preferences in terms of where the people come from?
No, we'd like to expand outside of Netherlands, that we're not feeling just because there's an attachment to Princess Irene that we rely on just on that. So yeah, whether it was any of the Americas, right across Europe, anywhere, Australia, Asia, anywhere. So,
and then, okay, and a related question was, you are open to collaboration with NGOs or maybe some sort of governmental agencies or educational institutions, or maybe even travel agencies, or again, are there any reservations of that type?
So my only reservation there would be travel agencies, the last one you mentioned there, unless you get some very unique type travel agencies coming through now, offering some very unique off the tourist path, the beaten tourist track, so to say. So, I mean, to the point now where people are looking for locations that they can go to where there isn't cell phone reception, where there isn't Wi-Fi, so those are the markets we need to be plugging into. People want to really get away from it all. What's the point in going to the Kruger National Park and having Wi-Fi and television and nothing's changed in your life? You're just at a different location. So what we're saying here is let's strip all of that away. Let's strip all of the bullshit away. Excuse my language, but let's get really, really down to what it feels like to sit in wilderness by yourself with this dark, dark sky above you and to hear the jackal calling, what is that emotion that it creates within you, and what does that mean for you? So really that's where it's, that deep emotional work starts. And it really, really is powerful. And once people have experienced that and recognized it, reminded themselves of it and where they come from, they start to crave it more and more and more. And so it's really just having that first bite and that taste, and then one can expand on it from there. Just to add, 2 organizations that we're partnering with as well is one called Quiet Parks International. And so they select certain areas and certain activities where you can come and hear nothing, just the sounds of nature. There's no man-made interference.
The best sound there is. Yeah.
And
where
those
many
are
of us live, it just constant buzzing, honking, shouting, sirens wailing, people, yeah, just too much.
Exactly, exactly. You know, we often talk about conserving water quality or air quality and conserving animals and that, but you seldom hear people promoting or talking about, but what about silence? You know, what if we lose these silent, quiet places?
Yeah.
And then the other one is the International Dark Sky Association. And so, you know, light pollution, these big cities, as you were saying, you know, how do you get away from the lights in Las Vegas? You know, you probably
Yeah,
don't.
yeah.
eh?
In New York, you don't
Yeah.
see the stars even at night. Yeah. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
So all of these little things add up to a really great, life-changing, impactful experience for the week.
pricing strategies. So how much does it currently cost, but also how do you bill or charge for your for participation in the program? Is it a fixed fee? Is it some sort of a subscription? So how does it work in terms of the pricing?
Yeah, so this is also an area where we need to improve on, and we haven't been probably as good as we need to be. So just to reiterate, for the students and the community, that's come from funded money, right?
Mhm.
So those people, those participants don't pay, mainly because they can't afford to. Okay, they haven't got the financial resources. Then what we've included in that also is for South African students that are studying nature conservation, because we feel that we're giving back. Then we're training those students up, they all go back into the field. And as I said, with these new ideas and these ways of living and being with nature, and start to implement them within the workplace as well. So generally, those are the groups that have been funded. Okay. As an example, this last retreat that we did with the medical personnel in November last year. So they were all Dutch participants. Let me put, you know, wealthy, well off, well enough to, you know, fly and drive over and spend a week or two in South Africa. Our rate for them we charged was 16,500 Rand, which is, divide that by 17 for euros. So what's that, about 1,000 euros pretty much, I guess.
That's not much at all. That's actually very, very reasonable.
Yeah, that's all inclusive, obviously, except your flights and your
Right.
transport.
I mean, but anywhere you go, you would be paying for the flights anyway. So
Correct. Yeah.
Oh,
Once you arrive here, there's no further costs. That's including your accommodation, your meals, and your facilitation during the week that you're here.
very interesting. So it's not too bad. We've been talking about for a long time now. Leon at some point said that maybe the sculpture planning retreat should happen at your location. And we have been seriously thinking about it, because normally we would meet at one of our sort of, like, for example, the last one was at my house here in North Carolina. But again, no matter where we do it, for many people, it would be still an intercontinental flight. So if we are all flying somewhere anyway, why not fly to some really cool place? I mean, North Carolina is cool, but I mean, not like your place cool. So, or Miami for that matter. Like, for example, I didn't like Miami at all because, again, it's noisy. I mean, I guess, you know, if you've never been there, it may not be a bad destination. But if you've been there, you know, it becomes, you know, a little, not particularly a good place to focus on work, on yourself, on conversations. Plus, in your case, I see it as a huge benefit. So even though you say off the grid, but it seems like you at least have the internet. So if it's an emergency, it sounds like there will be a way to go and check that email. So it's a perfect combination of being sort of isolated, but not isolated like you would be, you know. So you can still go online. So from that perspective, it seems like a perfect place for these kinds of meetings or retreats. So yeah. So a couple more questions. So looking forward, then, what is your ideal vision or sort of goal for this program? So if everything worked perfectly, let's say, I don't know, with the help of our students or maybe some other help from somewhere else. So where would you like to see yourself in, say, 3-5 years? So what would be the optimal level of operation engagement? Because I'm getting a sense that you're not very, you're not chasing money. So it's not like you would like to make it, you know, sort of an assembly line style tourist destination. So it seems like you have
So you're quite right there. So, I mean, one of the main things is that we want to keep our uniqueness, and we believe that our uniqueness is what has made the programs and the experiences so successful over the years, because it's different. It's not that tourist trap type experience. So to keep that at all times. Logistically, in terms of how many courses, we could, at the moment, we're probably doing 6 to 8 to 10 maximum, and could we push that to 12, 14 type of thing? So our main areas in terms of time frame would be January to the end of May. Okay. June, July, August, it gets really, really cold. We have water pipes that freeze, pipes that burst, gas pipes that freeze. The guest house is just, there's no
It's
central
interesting that
heating.
for those of us who don't know much about Africa, we always think that Africa is always hot. But yeah, you're all the way south. So yes, I guess you can have a real winter. Why not?
Yeah.
So yeah.
And we at an altitude, we about 1,500 meters above sea level.
So that's
So there's
another,
the
what is it,
Yeah.
6 degrees centigrade for every kilometer. So you lose like about 9 degrees just due to the elevation. Okay.
Yeah.
But does it mean that it would be more comfortable, cooler in the summer? So not too hot, not grueling hot, as sometimes Africa can be, obviously.
Yeah. Look, because we're up in the mountains, we generally have a bit of a cool breeze blowing. As I say, we can have a hot week or so, but it's not like, let me put it like this, Graaff-Reinet, which is 700 meters below us. They can be 42 degrees at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Whereas we don't get like that. That just type of heat is unbearable, So we generally have a colder climate. So June, July, August, generally we don't do courses or take bookings. It's difficult if you've got 16 people that have flown all the way from America and you can't provide them with some hot water and a meal because the water pipes and the gas pipes are frozen, So then we kick off again the second half of the year, September, October, November, up until sort of mid-December. So those are the ideal times, and any time within those months is an ideal time. There isn't a perfect time, Yeah, sorry, Loans just reminded me. So the one thing that we had spoken about is about, can we take Bergplaas, can we take these experiences to the customer type of thing? And whether that be in Europe or the States, or I don't know, one would have to find the right area that is, what's the word I'm looking for?
I suppose it could be
a type of program.
Yeah, it could be some sort of a partnership, perhaps, in that respect. Although, again, to me, the location is everything. So, for example, you mentioned Las Vegas just recently. I was there a couple of months ago for the winter break. And so in that area, you have some of the most picturesque, locations on the planet, too. So you have the Grand Canyon and the Bryce Canyon. But those places are busy. I mean, hardly ever, you can't even take a photo because there are so many people around you. And so winters are still okay, but summer, I mean, you are like in a packed bus all the time. So while they do have the nature, I mean, it's definitely not, the kind of isolation that you seek for these kinds of programs. So I'm sure you can find places like that. But again, I think one of the major selling points is the geography. So I suppose the program could be unique too, and maybe even it could be offered elsewhere, or maybe some form of partnerships with other locations. But I think what it will attract most of the people is specifically the location, and then obviously add to that a nice program, a good program, and so all of a sudden you have a blockbuster product in your hands. So yeah. The challenge is always, I envision, is informing the the potential customers about the opportunity. So it's not something that is people just know. So yes. There is a question from, go ahead, please. Sorry,
again, you're spot on there. The landscape, this reserve, this piece of property is so important to the experience, and it works just so well with the guest house and the staff and the meals, and it just, I don't know why, it just works so well together. Just for those who are interested in terms of competition or or maybe a similar type of product offered in the States. There's a group I've been following a bit called Open Sky Therapies.
Oh,
So
yeah.
if you have a look at that, that might ring a couple of
That is so true. I mean, somehow, at least in the West, I know people always seek sort of cure in some sort of pills or chemical stuff, pills and I don't know, maybe some intravenous or, basically drugs. And it seems to me that sometimes, at least many of the things like stress, like, anxiety, maybe you need that open sky therapy instead of the chemical treatment. So,
yeah.
somebody is saying that the sound is not very good. So is my sound okay? Because I hear you very, very clearly. So you can
Yeah,
hear me.
100%.
Yeah, so maybe it's just some sort of a reception problem. But there is a question from Pramesh about the government's role. So you mentioned that it's a private PPA, as you said. So does the government play any role in it, or what's the role of the government in it?
So with regards to the land and the establishment of the property as a nature reserve, they were involved with the administration and the paperwork and all of those legal costs. Going forward from then, that provincial Eastern Cape parks should have been involved in terms of providing expertise, hands-on assistance, but unfortunately they don't have the resources, the financial resources, or the staff. So from them we have very little input. Even yearly they are supposed to come to the property and to do an audit. I haven't seen anybody in 3-4 years, I don't think.
Well, in a way,
So
it's good
that's not-
because I know sometimes governments can be intrusive and sort of, be more of a hindrance rather than help. So at least in this case, they're not in your way. So maybe that's not a bad
Yeah.
thing.
Now, look, it's we're happy to work by ourselves because we know we have the ethics and we do what's needed to be done. We're not taking shortcuts. With regards to the training side, just recently what's come about is the Department of Forestry and Fisheries, which is a government department. They very seriously taking on what I mentioned, this internship for students that are studying their diplomas in nature conservation. So what they're finding is, so this specific diploma in nature conservation is 2 years full-time study, 1 year internship, and that gives you a 3-year national diploma in nature conservation. What they're finding is that these students are not having sufficient training in terms of short courses and genuine experiences within that year. So they're finding students that have and so it's a huge problem because you're spending all of this money and resources and the guys actually aren't able to do the job at the end of the day. Okay. So we've actually been approached by the Department of Fisheries now to for this next year, we plan 4 courses, 4 weeks with them. They'll send 16 students down. They're actually paying for them to fly down to Port Elizabeth, to come up to us, and actually to pay a contribution towards the students when the accommodation and the food for when the students are staying here, that they can have a week's experience. Remember, guys, this is coming back. I know it might sound a bit foreign to you, but this is coming back to the legacy of apartheid, where when I grew up, we'd go to the Kruger National Park, we'd go to the Drakensberg. I knew what an eland looked like. I knew what a lion looked like. Nowadays, you're having students coming out of tough conditions in the townships. The only lion they've ever seen is watching a National Geographic.
Yeah.
They go to study nature conservation at university. The first time they spend time in a nature reserve is when they start their year's internship. That's their first experience of living and working in nature. So those are sort of some of the parameters that we're working with. So it's quite nice that government's coming to us and looking for help in terms of their training.
Yeah, makes sense. Well, we are officially out of time, but there is one more question from Tracy Bright. So in terms of food sourcing, so she's asking, do your facilities include sustainable food sourcing, such as gardening, etc.? So
Tracy, yeah, we do. We have 3 tunnels. Not successful because of baboons. rock dassies and porcupine and kudu and eland, which like to get into the vegetables. And the cold. So we have a very short growing season here. It really starts from the end of November till February or March. So we try. The idea was that we could stock the guest house, when we had a course, because we actually only serve vegetarian meals when you're here on the course, that we could supply the guest house. But at the moment, we're just happy if we can supply the staff with some homegrown veggies. But it's an ongoing challenge, but we haven't given up yet. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. So Neha, I see your suggestion for subtitles, and I couldn't figure out how to switch them on. But for the next webinar, I'll do my research and see if we can have live subtitles for those whose sound is not very good. So, but otherwise, thank you so much for the wonderful presentation. So we have quite a few students from all around the world this semester. And so my hope is that they will bring many interesting ideas and maybe even some partnership leads or some other, more tangible proposals. And let's see where it leads us. So I'm excited. It's definitely a very different type of business. So I'm hoping that many students will choose it as their challenge to work on. And so it seems like it's one that not only they can help you, but they can also learn a lot in the process as well. So thank you so much, Leon, for connecting us. And I hope in a couple of months we'll have a lot of interesting ideas for you.
Yes,
So thank you so much.
Thanks, students. Thanks,
Yeah.
Russ. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a nice day, everyone, or evening, wherever you are. And so we have one more webinar starting in 10 minutes. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.